Hi, welcome back. I've got a different review for you today, and this will be one for the guys that are into their air guns. Maybe if you're into scuba diving, this will interest you as well, but obviously the main reason I'm putting it out is relating to air rifles, and specifically for the PCP type. So most of you that shoot air rifles are probably aware there's pretty much two main types of air rifle that you can get into. You've got the old style Springer, which relies on you mechanically cocking the rifle, compressing a spring. That spring compression then compresses air, which is then let out down the barrel, pushes the pellet out. Or you can have another means where you have a tank of air on the rifle itself. So on this one here, we can see the tank sits below the barrel. That's on the BSA Ultra SE, and then that air is released in small bursts through a valve and then pushes the pellet out of the barrel. So the benefit of a PCP is obviously that you've got a bunch of shots there without having to kind of manually cock it every time. You just run a bolt like you would on a normal rifle. The downside of PCP rifles is that you have to recharge them. So they might run like 100 shots, 150 shots, however many it is, but you'll get to a point where the tank has run out. So if we have a look on here, we can see on the bottom, we've actually got a little marker there that tells us how much air we've got. I'm at the bottom of the green on that at the moment, so it would be about the time that I would need to recharge. That can be a pain because you normally have to do it in two ways. Way number one, which is a hand pump. So again, we're back to like manual work, and it is really hard work with a hand pump. You know, I go down the gym, etc., so it's not too much of a big deal for me. But I'm kind of a bit breathy by the end of it, and you know, if you've got a bad back or arthritis or something, forget about it, because it's just going to absolutely do you in. And certainly if you're out shooting in the field, you probably don't want to be suddenly getting your heart rate up to, you know, double the normal pace just so you can put a few more shots down range. People get around that by running like an air cylinder. They might buy a cylinder from a dive shop or an air gun shop, sell them. The cylinder holds a higher pressure than the chamber in the rifle does, so when you release the valve on the cylinder, the air will flow into the rifle and you'll actually see the gauge on there increasing until you get to the point at which you're full up on the rifle. Then you just turn the air cylinder off. The downside to that is that those things need refilling. That can be expensive. You have to carry them around. You know, that can be a pain in the bum because they're actually quite dangerous to carry around if you have them slipping and sliding around in a vehicle. So a lot of people are now looking at getting a compressor, and it's not as easy as you might think, because you might think, oh, I'll pop down to the local DIY shop, I'll buy a compressor, I can just use that to fill up my rifle, and they can be had quite cheaply. The problem is they get nowhere near to the pressures required to fill a tank on a PCP rifle. Nowhere near, you know, forget about it. There's just not any available in any sort of DIY shops that you can go to locally that are going to do the job. They're all well below. We're talking about up to 6,000 PSI would be the kind of thing you're looking for. So that is a really specialist piece of kit. There's a whole bunch of problems that come in when you start compressing air. And there have been a few compressors out there that have been built for this task. Some of them are incredibly large and, you know, you just can't move them about. They are also quite expensive. So I came across this one here. I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation. The Dedepu, and it's actually a dive company, so if you look them up, I'll pop the links down below. It's like a Dedepu dive company, and they have this compressor specifically for dive related stuff, but they have got a bit on their website about using it for air rifles as well. It was very well priced. It's incredibly small. As you can see, I can lift it up with one hand, so I mean, it's still not incredibly light, but it's certainly a lot lighter than some of the other compressors that I've looked at for this job. And it's, you know, cheaper than most of the highly branded competition, let's put it that way. It's around $500, so probably about 450 quid, something like that. These can cost anything up to £800–900, so it's around half the price compared to a few on the market. And it's certainly at a very good price point. So I want to give it a review. We'll put it on the rifle. I'll just show you it working. I'll go through all the bits that come with it, but it's actually very, very simple. There's not that much to understand. So if we have a look at the back first, we have on there an on-off. We've got a fan here. We've got a start-stop switch. We've got our air out. We've got a safety valve on there, and we've got a release valve on there. And if we go round to the other side, we can see we have a power DC 12 volt there, so you could actually run that off a battery. We have a breaker on there, and then we have another power switch there and our AC power there. The first thing to mention is the AC power. Just to make you aware, it comes with a plug like so. So if you're in the UK, for example, that's not going to work for you. Very simply, you just buy one of these on Amazon. It's a little converter plug. You just plug straight in, and there we go, we're now converted. And then this simply plugs into the back. Now it does come with this piece here, which I haven't used, but that can be rigged up to a battery. As you can see, nice thick wire, nice high quality clips. Everything on this is good quality, I must say. You know, I haven't looked at any of this and thought, oh well, they've scrimped a bit here. It's decently well put together. It came really, really well packed. You know, there was no doubt about the packing method. It's some of the thickest cardboard I've ever seen. It comes with spare O-rings and spare filters. And as for the filter, you know, one of the issues about compressing air at very high pressure is that you can start to get moisture getting involved, and if you start pushing moisture into an air rifle, then you're going to have some problems, because obviously it's going to rust from the inside out. So you want to keep moisture out of it. So this thing here is a moisture trap, and it holds some filtration in there, so hopefully the moisture will be caught before it actually gets into your rifle. And then we've just got a quick connect on there. I've put on a probe that I know works well with my gun, and they're just quick connects that fit straight on. So if we turn this round, again, quick connect straight on there, and there we go. We have our probe ready to go. Now we do have a gauge on the top. I'm not going to use that. I'm actually going to use the gauge on the rifle. I find that preferable because there may be a little bit of discrepancy between the two. This one's in PSI, the rifle I think is in bar, so we'll just have a look as we go and see how we get on in terms of whether they match up at the end. I'll do a little bit of calculating and see if we have a match, but what we're going to do is simply fill the rifle. So we just undo here, have our probe that can just sit in like so. I'm going to pop something underneath there just to make sure it's held up properly. I'm going to angle it away from me, because the other thing is, if anything goes wrong and that comes flying out, I don't want it flying out towards me, and I want to be able to have a look at this little gauge down here. So if we flip that on, we can hear this thing kind of spinning up like a fan going on inside. Then we hear this one here, and it's quite noisy, as you can hear. You can probably hear it over my voice. And then we start filling. And you can hear the rifle is now filling as the pressure's filled, and I can actually see the gauge going up. When the rifle starts filling, it makes a kind of little squeaking noise. Sounds like a mouse. So once we've achieved our fill level, which we have, and interestingly the green to red on here, which represents 3000 psi, is actually pretty much matched up with what we've got on here reading in bar. It's just sat on the bar between the green and the red. We obviously don't want to go into the red because that represents things getting a bit too full and it could be dangerous. So the next thing we need to do is actually release any air in the system. This is really important, number one, because you probably won't be able to get that valve off, but if you could get it off, it would be highly dangerous because you've got a whole bunch of air compressed in between all that stuff in this tube here, and that could whip around, you know, it could really damage you. So we're going to let that off like so. Now we can turn the machine off. That's now spun down. So compared to some of the other compressors I've used or seen being used, this may seem like it was a little noisy. In fact, it was quite a lot quieter than what I'm used to. I was expecting way worse. It kind of jogs around a bit on the table, but for its size, you know, it definitely filled this up nice and quickly. It wasn't too noisy. It wasn't like vibrating all over the place. So that's a lot better actually than what I've been used to from some quite prestigious brand names. So we should now be able to release our valve. So there we go, valve is now off. Let me just check that fill. So as you can see now, we have a good fill on the rifle just between the green and the red. And that's only taken, you know, a couple of minutes to get that fill in there. It obviously wasn't run right down. Most people are never going to run their gun right down unless they've kind of done something seriously wrong. Maybe a valve's gone on the gun and you're having to start from scratch after having it fixed up again, replacing the O-rings or whatever. But once it runs into that lower red portion, the performance is going to be so awful, most people are just going to stop shooting at that point and want to refill it immediately because you're not going to be able to hit anything. So this is a pretty standard way you would fill from the bottom of the green up to the, you know, the higher part of the green before it turns red, and that really represents your kind of good band of performance for the rifle. Basically the velocity should be pretty reasonable throughout that band. You do find with PCPs, I mean, like this one, I'll probably get, you know, there'll be a certain amount of shots I get out of this. I normally get about 40 odd shots that are really, really consistent, and then even though I might still be in the green, it kind of starts dropping off performance wise before it hits the lower red. You can get around that by putting regulators on them. There's all kinds of modifications you can run. I'm actually quite happy with how it performs. This is a great rifle. I think I might have reviewed it before, the BSA Ultra. It's a fairly old model now, but this thing will work with pretty much any standard PCP rifle. They all have the same fitments pretty much, so there's no problems there. I would thoroughly recommend this Dedepu, strange name but absolutely excellent device. I can understand why people have been quite keen on this because of its size, its weight, its performance. The only thing that I think people might question is that it's only got one moisture trap, but you can actually buy more quick connects, more moisture traps, and they don't have to be specifically to this brand because the fitments are generic. So you could actually buy 2 more moisture traps and run them consecutive with each other, so you're kind of really reducing your chances of introducing any moisture into the rifle itself. I haven't noticed any moisture. It seems to be pushing out pretty dry air. It smells good. You know, that's one of the things you kind of realize if you're running stuff that's got a bunch of moisture sat in it. You can kind of smell the moisture sat in it. I haven't seen any of that, so far so good. I haven't had any problems. I thoroughly recommend this. It's something I can take out, I can take to the range, I can use it off a leisure battery if I want, I can use it off a car battery if I want. Not so easy these days, you know. I'm driving a BMW, and getting to the terminals on the battery is not as easy as it used to be, certainly, but it might be worth buying a leisure battery. You can pick them up pretty cheap, and then you could just run this off a leisure battery at the rifle range and maybe charge your mates a couple of quid if they want to fill up their rifles. It's a hell of a lot easier than carting around a cylinder, that's for sure. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll put a link down below. Let me know your thoughts on this piece of kit. I'm really impressed with it. If you've used one, let me know. If you've used a different model of compressor, let me know how these kind of match up, whether you think the noise was better or worse, whether you think the refill time was good. I think both were really, really good, and I think you'll be impressed as well. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll catch you all next time.